Still in Somalia, and some of the developments within the dispute that touches on the maritime issue. So the International Court of Justice has agreed to Kenya's request to delay the public hearing in its maritime boundary case with Somalia to June 2020. But is the ICJ an honest arbiter? Owing to the conflict, remember what is happening, or what happened in the South China Sea dispute by China, Philippines, Malaysia and Vietnam.
Well, ICJ has arbitrated over a number of cases, and they've given verdict, and the results in terms of implementation has been mixed. There are some of those verdicts that have been accepted. A significant number of those verdicts have been stayed on. Nobody, particularly the South China Sea, they don't heed the verdict from ICJ. The question we should be asking is ICJ the right place to go and have this kind of dispute between Kenya and Somalia? And my answer is no, it is not the right place to have the Kenya-Somalia maritime dispute. There's so many other alternative mechanisms that would be much more effective and would deliver results. One is the Africa Union border mechanism, AUBM, that we did discuss some times back at our experts symposium that was held by the convened by the Horn Institute. The second bit is direct bilateral negotiations between Kenya and Somalia, which in my view would be the best to actually go.
Dr. Kanenje.
The question should be, was the ICJ the appropriate forum? Of course, ICJ can make its ruling, can render its judgment. But the trouble is, if it's not favorable to either party, chances are those parties are not actually going to agree to it. And so we're going to be forced to go back to where the president, and in his wisdom at the United Nations, pleaded, extended a hand of friendship and of neighborliness and of brotherhood, that we should have a bilateral negotiation. We may not be able to do it alone. Perhaps we can get an honest third party to be able to intervene in that. But ultimately, and the only practical way out of this is for the two countries to talk. Now, I understand, and as Dr. Mustafa has alluded to it, Farmajo is also facing a tough time back home. There's an election coming up. And because politicians tend to be opportunists most of the time, if not all of the time, they had made this issue an issue. A lot of times you don't have success that you can run on. And so what you do in international relations, talk about and diplomacy, that external enmity tends to foster internal amity. So sometimes when you want to unite people in your favor, you have to create this enemy, or at least a subject matter that is external to your own conditions. And of course, but we also know there are other external interests, I think, which we presented in one of our studies and we shared on this show, that are at play, that have interest in actually making sure that, well, things are not favorable, at least for the countries in the region, so they can be able to exploit that schism. Now, having said that, one thing I would appeal, and it is good that we've at least been able to be given an extension, and we hope that within this time some sober minds are going to prevail to realize that it's futile to try and get a solution through the ICJ, especially when something has to do with a common shared maritime border, where we can simply be able to set up some joint commission, agree on certain mechanisms as people who've historically for thousands of years we've coexisted, together as neighbors and as brothers.
The process in the court, especially in the model that we have, this nature of litigation, is adversarial.
All right.
So when you come before the court, you already take that extreme positions from each other, and the outcome will always be a loser or a gainer or loss. There are mechanisms that are preferred. In fact, if we go to the charter itself that establishes ICJ, under that it even says preferred alternative mechanisms to the court itself, because of the adversarial nature of the court. And so having said that, I think this is where we should really give support to the efforts of President Uhuru Kenyatta. You saw at the UN, he made quite frantic efforts to try and bring President Famacho. They even had a meeting with President El Sisi to try and harmonize their positions. And as they have said, when you are in an election mode, it's so difficult for a country to take a position on a serious matter like this. Hopefully, if this election in Somalia gets out of the way, then we can have a good environment that we can sit and look at all this, whether it's AU framework, East African Community framework, or joint efforts, as has been said, commission, that should solve this matter. But otherwise, I mean, going to go to court, it is going to really now put us into that direct confrontation for a long time to come.
All right, Dr. Momo.
When you take things to litigation theaters, they end up with a win-lose situation. And mostly the enforcement of such outcomes needs a lot of commitment and needs a lot of people so that people don't renege on concessions they have made because it's a straitjacket approach. But I think what the world is saying and what President Uhuru was saying, and I think the entire region would love Kenya and Somalia to be given their space as neighbors. You can't wish away your neighbor. Sit down and negotiate this stuff. And what Hashi was pointing to, a commission and that kind of thing. The ICJ has ruled over, there are over 500 disputes in the world over territory and all manner of things. And they are not new. And there will still be others to come. The best way is for neighbors to sit down and look out in terms of their, their gain potential of working together. And those are things that experts have pointed to. We have spoken about these. A very nice article by Professor Makumi Mwagiro on that kind of thing. And that is where everyone is looking, and we know that will work out and this dispute will be resolved.